Good afternoon. I apologise for boring you to tears with the religious story that has persecuted the whole world for 2,000 years. And I've just been to the supermarket and I've topped up my supply of cider from the forbidden fruit and I've got myself some kosher pies. That's not the pie pizzo joke, it's just an ordinary pork pie. And I want to tell you something much more interesting about the British Royals. Although in the supermarket where I bought the pies, the Royals are on the front page of all national papers today, because Prince Andrew, the thief and the assassin in the Twin Towers scandal in 2001, head of the British trade delegation, is alleged to have been the lover of a 17-year-old girl. Isn't that tragic compared to the deaths of 4,000 people, all Gentiles, assassinated by the British monarchy? They're really good at it, and they are really good at covering it up. I'm going to tell you the story once I've given you the other headlines of King Carlos I of Portugal, dead at the hands of the Saxe-Coburgs. Okay, but first I'm going to tell you, while I'm besotted with the religious fraud and the damage that that does to the whole of the free world, Mario Draghi is working a flanker at the European Central Bank in Frankfurt as the English Prime Minister and the Scottish Prime Ministers suck up to each other, pretending that they're trying to leverage some benefits for their people. It is a massive scandal, and what Draghi has done is to regenerate the massive devaluation of the euro by generating another round of quantitative easing. This time he has released 1.3 trillion euros into the European economy to bust the European economy and to launch dozens of financial frauds and Ponzi schemes, with all of the old Ponzi schemes, the bond scams that led to the Greek crisis, the Italian crisis, the second Irish crisis, and the absolute ripping out of every one of the assets from those companies. Draghi is at it again, and the quantitative easing is just a way of issuing money to themselves and devaluing totally the money and the savings and the investments of every citizen in the Eurozone, including the UK and including the nations like Poland, where they still have their own currency but are now tied to the euro. And I was given that information by some very friendly and informed and scholarly people who are migrants from Europe, and they are very welcome as far as I'm concerned, because they understand the plight that Europe is in much better than the local citizens of Scotland. Let me tell you about Carlos I of Portugal. You know that I'm a fan of the Greg Hallett history, and Greg Hallett's history took me to a place called Cintra, and Cintra is one of the places where the Portuguese kings have access to. Carlos I of Portugal, I've never heard of him before, and when I saw the sequence of events that took me from Cintra Castle, which is, I was still engaged in my religious research, and Cintra Castle is legendary for the muddy jar architecture, and the muddy jar could be the explanation for why people like Shakira, as they cross the mountains, get down on their knees and cover themselves with mud. Gladiator used to bend down pick up the soil and rub it between his hands like I used to do on the rugby pitch, because it looks romantic and it rather intimidates the opposition that you're prepared to get down and to get dirty with it. Okay? The British royals really get dirty with it really frequently. They assassinate their cousins, their in-laws. Princess Diana is a victim of all of this. But all of the stuff that I've discovered today is more than 100 years old, and it takes you into the fraud that Greg Hallett has revealed. None of it is available in the history of our world unless you look really deep. So I'm going to show you now on the screen the stories that I'm telling you about, and I'm going to show you first how they cover it up. Remember when we talked about the Formula 1 stories and the French romanticists, in other words the propagandists, making up stories that make things look really romantic in popular culture, like the efforts to assassinate their Prime Minister de Gaulle. De Gaulle and Pompidou are brutal leaders, but they are led into that by coercion bureaus led by Jacques Foccart and the CIA and all of the intel organisations across Europe. Let me tell you now the stories about these more up-to-date events, and I'll take you first into the criminals that make it work. Look at the words of this song. Okay? You might have heard it before. I'm unaware of the words. They are a giveaway. Isn't that ambitious? We're prepared to corrupt people's politics and use dirty tricks against our international neighbours. Okay? Let me show you how they cover it up.
planeta, todos los revolucionarios juntos luchando al mismo tiempo. ¿Tú me dices arrogante? Pues sí, no jodas, soy un arrogante.
How long have you been with us? You are still a boy. I need men.
So you don't trust me because I'm young?
You have to prove yourself.
Like you, I strongly believe that the Palestinian struggle should take at an international level. I will be honored to contribute some of my modest skills.
Choose a good name.
I already have.
Terror, blackmail, the taking of civilian hostages.
Every Western intelligence service has its item.
This meeting women trying to convince you. You need me. My name is Fear.
Who do you think you are?
Are you a moral judge now?
I decide whether you must be eliminated or not.
For me, there's no combat.
I am honored to meet the famous Carlos. You have become her.
The guy with a gun is ever so English. He also leads the film on the Amritsar massacre and lets the lower ranks take the fall for everything that happens. Okay, that is the story covered up by the French romantic sector. Let me now tell you the story about Cintra. Cintra is the place where Greg Hallett went to meet the legitimate claimants to the British throne. That was way back in, I think, 2010. He escaped from New Zealand in 2011 when they hosted the Rugby World Cup, and he went to visit the survivors. The Duchess of Alba is the parent of the man he visited and made the deals with, and he went to Cintra Castle. Now, if I could open up that image a little bit, it would be revealing for you, because Cintra it's got novel architectural features, and it's got a couple of bits of the building that are twin towers. That I'm not able to expand that image, unfortunately. Let's see if there's another one further down. The Castle of the Moors. Now, the Moorish castle has been razed to the ground, and there is allegedly nothing much left of that, and so this is about religious conflict in Spain over thousands of years or hundreds of years, and Cintra is the epicenter. The architecture is magnificent, and there is the picture of the twin towers at the end of the castle in the kitchen region. Okay, and all Greg Hallett's stories are really interesting, and the twin towers are everywhere. In the images that you see of New York with the village people, you've got twin towers in the background. You've got the twin towers that were at the mouth of the Mediterranean, and Portugal is not too far away from that, but these are just like beehives, and the beehive is the government building in New Zealand, where I worked for a long time. But let's get down to the stunning bit of this story. I did not realise until today that there was ever a King Carlos of Portugal, and they're unlikely to have another one because of what happened to him. Let's read his story, and let's read about who were the beneficiaries of his sudden death. Okay, Carlos I, the diplomat, also known as the martyr, Portuguese, O Diplomato o Martirizado, September 1863 to the 1st of February 1908. That's an era where loads of elites who were in the team sometimes but were suddenly removed from the team when they fell out with the leaders of the team. And I've talked a lot about the dominant monarchies in Europe, and Portugal is not in those, unfortunately, any longer. So the diplomat was the King of Portugal and the Algarves. He was the first Portuguese king to die a violent death since Sebastian of Portugal in 1578. This occurred in 1908 when D. Carlos was murdered in Lisbon as he travelled in an open carriage with the royal family. Decent looking cove. He's got a moustache and he's got tassels. They are a massive part of the religious fraud, but I've not gotten round to that yet. Okay, he's got the sword very akin to the one that the Portuguese claimant to the British throne carried when Greg Hallett was meeting him and looking at all of the history and the verification that Marcos Manuel and his relatives are the legitimate claimants to the British throne. Okay, Carlos was born in Lisbon, Portugal, and that's maybe why Celtic were allowed to win the European Cup. All of those things that I've told you about the sporting frauds and the people being slipped in. So Celtic are the Lions of Lisbon, like the runner in the 10,000 metre is the lion of the lion in the African country where the Piso runs through it. Haile Selassie, the 10,000 metres champion. They slip in the sportsman to cover the contemporaries of Jesus Christ and the Spanish and Portuguese monarchies. Okay, so Carlos was born in Lisbon, Portugal, the son of King Louis and Queen of Maria Pia of Savoy. Now Pia Arland Harkinson is the secretary for Barroso